It's been a while. Hey, it's Romania Black, and yeah, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was coaxed into for JanuYaoi watching Sex Pistols or Love Pistols. Technically, Sex Pistols is the Japanese name, but Love Pistols is what it's known by because of copyright reasons with a European band. However, I was coaxed into watching an OVA series for that, and then it led me into diving into a 10-volume spree of madness that ended on an unresolved cliffhanger, and I was like, what? So you may recall back on April Fool's, I did a video being like, oh, Sex Pistols Volume 11 after 2 years finally was released. And I was like, oh, haha. So I was gonna do a video about Volume 11 because I was kind of floored by it, and then girl got busy and Hot Girl Summer happened, and Sex Pistols was put on the shelf. But baby's been in a corner long enough. I wanted to put back on the zebra dress, come back out here, and talk to y'all about Volume 11 because I'll be honest, I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued. So if you don't know what Sex Pistols is about, there's a link to my thorough analysis of volumes 1 through 10 of the manga as well as the OVA. You can go check it out. But what we're going to focus on is the Madarame family, the Murs, this weird sci-fi trajectory the show is going with that I'm all aboard, and kind of Norio and Kasamatsu's relationship because I'm kind of fascinated about it now, and I'm really excited and curious about the direction it's going in. So let's talk about that. I just want to spend this video kind of updating you on Volume 11 of Love Pistols, aka Sex Pistols, and letting you know my thoughts about it since it's been a couple years since I've dived into the series and what I think about it. Overall with Sex Pistols, I find that it is a little bit more known in the zeitgeist than I think people take it for granted as being known. I feel like whenever you mention Sex Pistols, people are like, oh, is that like the Omegaverse one with the animals? It's like, yes, but I find it being influenced in a lot of fan fiction. I've seen a lot of BL be influenced by it. There's been a lot of crossovers in the fanfic world that I'll be scrolling through AO3 and I'll see a Sex Pistols crossover and I'm like, really? And so I definitely feel like having went back and reread volumes 1 through 10, which was a trip, and then diving into volume 11. Volume 11 feels like a renaissance. Volume 11 of Sex Pistols feels like a renaissance that has got my interest renewed in this series. For context, I'm kind of amazed because Sex Pistols came out in 2004. The manga started in 2004. This year is the 20th anniversary of Sex Pistols. This mangaka has been slowly but surely whittling through this story for 2 decades. And I think that's worth noting. And I will give the mangaka props for this. Girl commits. And she is like, okay, I have this story. I have this concept. I could let up and maybe try to make it a little more stereotypical, or I could just double down and go all in and make it even weirder and even more sci-fi. And the answer is yes, do those things. So that's where we're at. So up here on the board, we're going to talk about this. So if you've not, after you've watched my little explanation of volumes 1 through 10, which gave me a literal migraine and made me question my existence, you can come back and we'll go through this loveliness. So I'll give you time to go do that. Did you have fun? Let's talk about volume 11. Let's talk about volume 11. So, the good thing about volume 11 is whereas volumes 1 through 6 kind of set a lot of these characters up, and volumes 7, 8, 9, and 10 went in all these different directions with different stories that did not involve Norio, did not necessarily involve Kasamatsu, but with volume 11, the focus is in some ways a lot more tightened back to the original couple, which is Kunimasa and Norio. We'll talk about them. So I feel like now, after reading volume 11, I kind of have a bigger appreciation for the other volumes because it feels like they were setting up characters that are going to have a role and importance later on in the story we needed to set it up to get there, and now we're starting to get there, right? So if you don't know, it's like Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It is just like, this is the most family drama of any manga I've read in recent memory. So hold on to your seats. If you didn't watch that video that I had linked to and asked you to watch, if you weren't sure about Sex Pistols, basically in the world of Sex Pistols, they are basically entities that have remnants of animal DNA. So they're called Zoomans. It's dumb, I know, but they're basically humans that have animal DNA that still allows them to change into those animal forms, but it gets more complicated and spiritual than that. They're also able to change their soul. Gege Akutami's really excited about this, apparently. Who knows if he is or not. He probably reads Sex Pistols, let's be real. But they also have this they have this big triangle, and I'm going to kind of come back here and point out to it, a kind of hierarchy in the evolutionary world of the Zoomans, right? And it's kind of very Omegaverse, where you have Omegas and Alphas, but they have these things called seeds, which not only kind of ties to sexual release, but also ties to their forms. So the light seeds are like your commoners. They're like your Omegas that are pretty common. They're just there. There are many different species. Most of them are snakes for reasons. And then you kind of have your middleweight seeds, which have a little bit more presence. Then you have your heavyweight seeds, which are like your alphas. They're like your dominant ones. Then you have what's called the missing link. Or they have an actual name that is in that video link that I gave you, but they're they're like the originators of species. They're the keys to everything. And we're going to get into that real quick, because the mangaka has taken a very sci-fi crazy twist with this, and I'm here for it. Then you have the Mers. Freaking love the Mers. The Mers are what you think they are. They're like mer people. But because they're mer people, they have a very spiritual, supernatural element to them, and they're kind of they sort of transgress even the human realm. They're not even present in the human realm of being. They're kind of in this astral plane. Reading Berserk now, I have a better appreciation for Sex Pistols. Reading Berserk has given me a better appreciation for Sex Pistols. And that's kind of just because it talks about this astral world that the mer people kind of have access to. They can't really take a very tangible shape in the real world. That's kind of the sacrifice. You get to have like this all omnipotent presence, but you don't get to experience the luxuries of the human realm to the fullest extent. You win some, you lose some. So within this, we have the family tree of the Madarame. Now, the Zoomans are also called the Madara, which the Madarame is kind of like the head family. So having read all of these other volumes, it really establishes that there's kind of like a hierarchy and a royalty system to it. And the Madarame family are like the royalty of the Zooman world, and they've kind of crafted themselves to be that way. They're sort of like the royal family of Sex Pistols. But you have Kunimatsu Madarame, who we don't know a terrible amount about, except that he's kind of like a mafia boss. He's just grooming his daughter Makio, which we'll get into Makio. I talked enough about her in the last video, but he was basically grooming his daughter and his grandchildren to uphold the Madarame family line. Like you do. Makio is a hoe, and she has sex with everyone, and she has children with everyone, and gender is not an issue. So, and that's the one thing about the Zooman and Sex Pistols. It's kind of like Omegaverse, where both male and female characters can bear children. There are means in which that happens, and you'll just have to go to the OVA to find out how that works, because it's a trip. But anyway, so Makio is this daughter of Kunimatsu, and she has a lot of relationships. The relationship that matters the most right now is that she married a man named David, and they had a son named Kunimasa, which is important because Kunimasa is linked back to Kunimatsu. He has a name just like his grandfather. So he's the heir to the Madarame family line. He's the one that's the heir, and we're going to come back to that. But he's the one that develops a relationship early on in Volume 1 with Norio Tsuburaya, who is our main character, Norio. Oh, Norio. I love Norio. We're going to talk about them in this. But Kasamatsu and Norio were the original couple in Sex Pistols, and most of the series, like Volumes 1 through 6, on and off, focus on them and their relationship. We'll talk about them in a hot second. But basically they're the main couple, and then volumes 7, 8, 9, and 10 kind of focused on the rest of the Madarame family, and it's insanity. So after Makio was with David, she was like, got rid of him and got with this other man named Maximilian Seymour. Now Maximilian and Makio have this son named Yonakuni, and Yonakuni gets with Fujiwara, who is like the silver fox in the OVA, right? Now Yonakuni, I like Yonakuni. He's kind of very stoic, but him and Kasamatsu have known each other since they were kids because they're half brothers, and they've grown up together and they seem to get along. And that's their story. But we're going to kind of focus on them in a little bit. Then Makio not only got with 2 men, but here's the messed up part of the story, okay? So Kunamatsu, we don't know anything about Makio's mother. And I feel at this point in the story, because this whole thing is really big into family trees, the fact that we don't know a lot about Makio's mom feels like a point the mangaka is intentionally keeping from us and keeping a secret. Maybe I missed it in the story, but I don't think we've talked about Makio's mother. She's not mentioned in the family line, so which we'll go back to. But basically, Kunimatsu, after whatever happened to Makio's mom, got with Karen Tokashiki, and they had a son named Shinobu. We'll come back to Shinobu here in a little bit. But here's the twisted part. Karen not only had a son with Kunimatsu, she ended up getting with Kunimatsu's daughter, Makio. And Makio and Karen have a daughter named Monami. Or, I don't know, is Monami a boy or a girl? I thought Monami was a girl, but I think they're a boy. So, don't quote me on that. But, anyway, they have a child named Monami. So, why not? Why not? It's a messed up family tree. It's messed up, right? But they have Monami, and Monami has a bodyguard named Taru Inukai, right? So there's them, right? Meanwhile, Maximilian, as well as David, the 2 guys that were married to Makio, after Makio left them to go get with her dad's ex-girlfriend, they got together, and they had a son named Hidekune. I like Hidekune a lot. Hidekune is one of my favorite characters, especially in this volume. I like Hidekune a bit. We'll come back to him. We'll come back to Hidekune. Anyway, so that's this messed up family tree. But Shinobu, who is Karen and Kunimatsu's son, he ends up being the bodyguard, aka, and the lover of Vulnera. And Vulnera is also called VB. Now, Vulnera is one of my favorite characters. He is a mer. He's one of the mer people. He's basically an outcast among the mers because he's half mer and half lion. So he's like a lionfish. But he is basically, since he's an outcast, he kind of doesn't feel like he needs to align with the Mers and their beliefs, but he's also kind of an outcast from the Zoomans, so he's sort of in this limbo no man's land. And what's interesting about all this is that he seems like he's trying to get a hold of Norio and contact Norio for reasons. So let's dive into this, shall we? The first opening page of volume 11. Now, to be fair, where we left off at volume 10, there was stuff going on with the Mers, and there was a wedding taking place with these characters that we didn't know, and they were friends of the Madarames, and it was all these people we had just met for a brief time, and we were like, what is happening? Volume 11 ignores all of that. The moment we start volume 11, I'm like, oh, so we're not really going to acknowledge anything that happened in volumes 8, 9, and 10. Okay. Just... And the crazy thing is, I went to the wiki sites for this series, and after volume 8, they just kind of gave up updating. So this is your update at this point, because the websites aren't updating for Sex Pistols. So here's your update in case if you're wondering what's happening in this insane series. A lot of interesting things, actually. So the opening page of this entire series starts out with this shot that it looks like Norio sitting in a white chair. Now, the cover photo was Kasamatsu in the black chair, right? But you have Norio, it looks like, sitting there in like a nautical captain's chair. Their hair is turned white. The chair that they're sitting in is the same one Kasamatsu was, and it's slowly turning white as well. You have a Shinobu standing there behind them, and they're holding a sword. Right? And we learn from the text that the hair of certain Zoomans is used to make these swords, and they have some kind of connection to altering time and space. If that sounds wild to you, that's where I'm at as well. So, this opening page says, "Not yet. We're in the midst of the vortex. If we wish to remain as we are, as human, then we must remain as we are in the lukewarm water. The replacement, the musical phrase, when that time comes, then I will dispatch all of you unto those places." Now, if that sounds ominous and slightly religious and kind of apocalyptic, I got that vibe too. So, I don't know. They talked in the previous volumes about the vortex, and the Murs are kind of there, and it's sort of this astral plane. So, the whole thing with the Zoomans is that they try to basically keep their shape to look like humans. And that keeps their soul intact. When they start to turn into their animal forms, when they get horny or when they get overexcited, then their soul starts to break apart and they start to lose shape. And that's not a good thing. So they try to keep it all in check. But because of that, it's hard for the Zooman to reproduce. It's hard for them to bear children. There's a lot of problems with keeping their species alive in the human realm, which is an issue. So this all seems very apocalyptic, like there's going to be trumpets sounding and the Zooman called back forth to the Murs. Who knows if that happens? I don't know why this series would suddenly have this very cryptic, poetic page right after it, but it does. So the very next page, granted, nothing is explained to you. You're just going to have to figure it out. Then they have this page, and I'm going to read this poetry to you, and you figure it out. So it says, "Number 6, the king of death, the specter born of the space between the parent of Mars and Jupiter. What sort of car do you like?" The leader asks the woman. "When I ask if you like a particular car, it's only because we've rented a variety. If you simply decide, it shall be. Number 6 is always on the prowl for the king, aiming to slay, but the king's power is overwhelming. The stage where number 6 has been erased. Number 6 has not been able to move from there, so the snow piles up around number 6, just as they are, abandoned as they are, until they are buried. Until suddenly one day, he went to the wavering king. What the hell are you doing? To be like that, living on like that. Number 6 felt they were one of a kind. They may not be quite the level of the king, but they had power. And because of that, he became an ally of the king once again. You are a specter. Number 6, the king of death. He intended to overthrow the king and become king in his place. But instead, he was the king's death. The next guide to lead them was the woman. Previously, the woman and number 6 had been comrades together in that place. Everyone is aging. The day is coming to embark in the car. Wood Dragon." Hi. Now, so we have these different characters. We have the king, we have the woman, we have number 6, which is the king of death. So, and there's 3. This series likes to position people in trios. They like trios quite a bit. And so you have the number 6, the woman, and you also have the king, right? Or technically you have 2 people. You have the number 6, the king of death, and you also have the woman. Now they talk about what kind of car you like, and they say one day it's coming that everyone's going to embark in the car. They're going to have to choose a vehicle or a route to go on. They're going to have to pick a decision and decide a path that they have to follow, right? That seems to be what it's saying to me. But they talk about the number 6 always being on the prowl to find the king. So you have number 6, and you also, I guess there are 3 people, number 6, the king, and the woman. But what these people mean and who they represent, if you've read this volume, you can comment down below your thoughts. But I don't know. I feel like Kasamatsu is being talked about because he's supposed to be the heir of the Madarame family, which is like the king. And then I don't know if Norio is supposed to be number 6, the king of death, or if it's referring to something else, or if they're the woman. We'll just have to see. So then, the cast of characters and family tree, the other volumes didn't give us this shit. I was like, you mean I had to wait 10 volumes and 20 years before you gave us a family tree? Okay, cool. Thanks for that. But I want to go ahead and talk real briefly about what it says about each of these characters. So it says that Kunimatsu is Makio's father, the powerful leader of Japan's heavyweights. Kunimasa is being groomed as his successor. Then you have Makio. Because of the burden of her role in the Madarame clan, she's reckless and even callous, and she dotes on Monami, her youngest child. So, okay, Monami is a boy. Never mind, thank you. So Monami is a boy. They just have long hair until a certain point in this volume. So, anyway, and that kind of makes sense for Makio's character. Her dad was really overbearing, and she just kind of rebelled and had sex with a lot of people and a lot of kids, and she's just like, F you, Dad, I'm going to do what I want. I kind of respect Makio in a way, but she is a piece of work. She is terrifying because she does not give any Fs and just does not seem to be bothered. So David, who is Kasamatsu's dad, is a sculptor, a genius sculptor, if you will. And Maximilian Seymour, who is Hidekune, as well as Yonakune's father and mother, by and by, is an architect born into a heavyweight family with royal blood. So Maximilian was chosen because he has royal blood. The funny thing is that Yonakune is not, he's the one that should have more royal blood, but he's not the one that is the heir. It's Kasamatsu, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But Yonakune is a crocodile heavyweight. His gorgeous features and special sex appeal make him popular with the ladies. But he's gotten with Shiro Fujiwara, who is the last of the Japanese wolves, once believed to have been extinct. He's a very proper class president. Now, here's the thing. The Madarame brothers, Yonakune and Kunimasa, if you've noticed, they both have a tendency to get with very high-profile lovers. Like Shiro Fujiwara is the last of the Japanese wolves. So, of course, it's okay for Yonakune to get with him because he's a rare breed. Then you have Norio, who is an awakened... he awakens suddenly to his place as a Zuman, and more specifically as a missing link. So Norio is very rare as well. So, of course, Kasamatsu is with him. Now, Kunimasa... Not Kasamatsu. Kunimasa is the Madarame clan's successor in waiting. He's often overbearing, and he is devoted to his family. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Then you have Hidekune, that is the son of David and Maximilian. So he is both Yonakune and Kunimasa's brother, their half-brother. He has an astonishingly normal upbringing thanks to his two loving parents. Hidekune has like the most normal parentage. Like his two dads are both brilliant and fabulous, and he's just a really nice guy, and he's stuck in this messed up family. He's like the most normal out of all of them, and I love him. And he wants the best for Norio, and I'm here for it. I almost, after this volume, want to ship Hidekune with Norio, but we'll get into it. So then Kunimatsu got with Karen, and she was his mistress when she was in high school, and now she's hung up on Makio, like you do. Monami is the selfish, brother-obsessed youngest boy in the family. He has an intense rivalry with Norio. He does. He's just kind of like, he likes his brothers, and Monami reminds me of Nanami from Revolutionary Girl Utena, which I'm sure the names rhyming could be complete coincidence, but I feel there's a connection there. But yeah, Monami has an intense rivalry with his brothers. Then his bodyguard is Taru Inukai. And then we have Shinobu, who took charge of Vanera's education on his father's orders, and he blames himself, not his lineage. Yeah, Shinobu's kind of masochistic and thinks that he's at fault for everything when it's like, your dad's kind of messed up. It's not just your fault. Anyway, then we have Volnera, who is a Murren Lion mixed blood. He has tremendous influence over the world of Zumanity and carries a torch for Shinobu. Yeah, I really liked the volume where him and Shinobu developed a relationship. It was really good. But yeah, so he's kind of transcends, just the human specter like you do. So then we have this other page that talks about the world of love pistols, aka sex pistols, which I thought it was really good to bring this up. They have a triangle of all of these things that we've talked about. So Mur is at the top of the triangle, then the missing link, which is Norio, then bear heavyweight, bear's community bear party. Then you have cat heavyweight, dragon heavyweight, dog heavyweight, serpent heavyweight, and then bear middleweight, something, and we go down the list, right? So anyway, it says a subsection of humankind with lingering animal DNA is Zumanity. Zumanity is descended from reptiles and mammals other than monkeys. Because of the fragility of their genetic material, it is difficult for them to reproduce. In order to preserve lineages, arranged marriages, Purchases of seed for breeding programs and even reproduction between homosexual couples is increasingly meticulously planned. Non-Zooman humans are unaware of the Zooman societal system. Zoomans generally call average humans monkeys, while normal humans live on unaware of the presence of Zoomans in their society. There are many who are susceptible to special Zooman pheromones. So yeah, it's very Omegaverse, right? They can forget themselves and transform into animals. The general habit is to use a blinding ability to hide one's true soul or form. However, in moments of passion or other strong emotions, the human form can give way to the animal. So yeah, there's this way of they create not only blinds to keep people from seeing their animal form, but they also create blinds, as we will come to see in this series, and it's been talked about in previous volumes, to basically brainwash or keep people from knowing. It basically brainwashes somebody into liking you, is a blind. And that was established way back in the series, and it's going to come up here in a second. So a stratified society. Among Zoomans, the rare breeds are known as heavyweights and are considered the elite, the celebrities of all celebrities. They possess high status and wealth. Zooman society is one where duty trumps romantic love. However, the protagonists of the story have resolved to at least strive, confusedly, towards love. No matter what the obstacles, they will overcome anything for love. And that's where things get complicated because, yeah, this whole series has been talking about Norio and Kunimasa, two star-crossed, unlikely lovers. And most of this story was taking place talking about that relationship that they had. And a lot of Sex Pistols focuses on this idea of duty over romance and being like, they're arranged marriages. We have to do this to keep our species alive. We have to keep doing this for the reproductive purpose of progressing our lineage. We don't marry for love. We marry for duty. And so a lot of the story was that, oh, Norio and Kunimasa, despite everything they've had going towards them and how different they are, they've fallen in love and they're having this relationship. But that's all about to be challenged. And I was like, okay, so what you going to give us, Volume 11? So we start out with Norio dreaming of encountering Vulnera, which I thought was so cool. I was like, oh, Vulnera is talking to Norio. And I was like, okay, now we're getting context for all the other volumes. It's all coming together. Vulnera, we had to learn, was this super ethereal, otherworldly mer, and they're getting hold of Norio, which would make sense because Vulnera and Norio are at the top of the pyramid. They're the two highest ranked Zoomen of this entire series. But then Vulnera says that you're the promised one. And I was like, oh, we're getting a chosen one narrative 11 volumes in. He's like, you're a fragment of a soul. And once you're paired with your destined lover, they will pass over the rainbow, crossing that border legally or otherwise. So basically, it's making it seem, and I love this shot of Vulnera naked dancing with Norio and the way that their bodies are drawn, the muscularity and everything. It's very Renaissance. It's very Da Vinci. It's very beautiful. But essentially, they talk about fated pairs, which a lot of Omegaverse stories have. But essentially, Norio is special. And getting with Norio is not like getting with other Zoomen. Because Norio could allow the people that get with him to cross dimensions and gain power they didn't previously have. So it reminded me a lot of like the portals in Trigun with Vash and Knives. It was reminding me of that as well. I won't go any more details about that, but reminding me of that. And so Norio is like us, the audience. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like hinges and rainbows and borders. Like, what do you mean? And Vulnera appears clothed now and says, well, people can call them their destined person as if it were romantic or the other half of their soul. But basically, you're a hinge that opens or closes the gates of heaven. And it's like, oh, so Norio has the ability to open up into another realm of existence. Cool. He's like, your hinge score is how we calculate the efficacy of your performance as a hinge. Like, they make this very clinical. Like Vulnera's like, hey, the Mers, we're kind of very clinical about this. We're like elves in Lord of the Rings, and we need to look at your hinge score. It's kind of like a credit score. We need to know how effective you are in allowing people to cross into the other plane of existence. So that's what we're looking at. And basically Norio's like, well, is that necessary? He's like, it is. If the door's open, we can go outside. If the door is closed, we can keep our precious things safe. And I love that line because Volnera is saying basically, yeah, the mer people would like to go outside and interact with you humans, but if we do that, things are going to get dangerous for your side of the world. It's better if the mer people stay in our realm and you stay in yours, but you're one of the creatures that could open up the gates between realms, just so you know. And it's like, what? It's so sci-fi and creepy. And then he talks about gaining access to the meteor data, which I'm pretty sure was mentioned in a previous volume, but they didn't explain it then. He's like, the access is required to command and control this world. It's the quality most crucial to a guide and a leader. And you are the one who's supposed to have that authority. So essentially, Volnera is saying, because you're a missing link, you have access to be the door between two realms. You have that power. You could be a leader and someone that could control the Zuman. So all of this stuff about the Matarames being in charge and being like this mafia family that are the celebrities amongst the Zuman, Volnera's like, that all doesn't mean anything compared to you because you rank above them and you don't even know it yet. It's like, and then we find out that Norio, he's like, your mediator number 37, the king of the ape men. So, Norio doesn't remember this dream, obviously, because why would we have that happen? But basically a mediator is one of the kings. And I like that we had number 6, which was the king of death, and Norio is mediator number 37, the king of the ape men, so that could be part of it as well, leading back to that first page. But I like that basically this gives Norio a lot more power and a lot more importance to the story. They're not just, and I'm not usually one for chosen one narratives, but it's going to really come into play with this volume and Norio and Kasamatsu's relationship. So that's important to know, that Norio is special. And Volnera makes a point of saying, you've been loud, you've been hanging out with the celebrities, and everyone knows that you are here, and that's not safe for you. He's like, you are attracting a lot of attention, and if the wrong people find out, they're going to try to hurt you because you are somebody that has more power than them. You just don't know it. And it's like, so it's definitely adding more stakes and making it to where there could be people try to hurt Norio in the future, which is going to tie into all of this. So then we come back to Norio. Norio, I guess post high school, Norio has moved into, or they could even still be in high school technically. It doesn't exactly say for sure in the volume, but Norio has moved into the Madarame household. He works as a server there. So it is noted that Kunimasa, here's the thing that's frustrating. Kunimasa's character is an asshole. And they were an asshole early on in the story. I was like, Norio's really nice. But Kunimasa, why are you being such a jerk? And we kind of get the reason why Kunimasa is being a jerk in this volume. It's finally all kind of laid out for us. But he's an asshole. And so while Norio's been working in this household and taking care of the family and pining over Kunimasa, Kunimasa has been overseas cheating on Norio and having sex with all these women. And I'm like, what? What is happening? How dare? And yet, despite that, Norio is still obsessed and in love with Kunimasa. He's like, well, it's okay. I can't wait for him to come back and all this. And Hidekune is not happy with this. Hidekune, which is the half-brother of Kunimasa, who I think has a crush on Norio. He doesn't like this at all. He's like, my brother's being an idiot. He's cheating on Norio. Norio still loves him for whatever reason. I hate it. And he wants to do something about it, but he just can't figure out what. Now, obviously, Hidekune likes Norio. Monami, who has a rivalry with Norio, does point out, he's like, well, you should just leave. He's like, Norio, Kunimasa's cheating on you. He doesn't like you. You should just leave. Why are you staying here working? What's the deal? But Norio won't. And it's like this whole thing. He's like, no, we're like, it's true love. Like, even though Kunimasa's going through all this stuff right now, in the end, we're going to be together because that's just how love triumphs over all and la la la. And Monami's like, that's dumb. But basically, Kunimasa shows up and time outside of high school has done him well because he's just got all this surging alpha dick energy to the point where Kunimasa is powerful enough that all of the light seeds or like the omegas are instantly attracted to him, and he can basically control people just by looking at them. But Norio sees Kunimasa. We're back together. And Norio's like, where have you been? I've been waiting on you for years. You've been out cheating on me. And Kunamasa's like, okay, let's go. I'm here. We're going to be together now. Let's leave. So you're like, okay, they're going to talk it out. Things are going to be fine. They're going to probably have an argument and ask, why has he been cheating on him and all of this. And so instead, Norio gets rightfully mad at Kunimasa and is like, hey, bastard, what are you doing? I'm mad at you. And in that moment, with Norio being mad, Kunimasa gets excited by that. I'm reading Scum Villain Self-Saving System right now, and I'm going to just go ahead and tell you, Kunimasa is giving major Lo Binghe vibes in this moment. And I was like, oh, So, but we find out why he's excited about Norio being mad at him. We find out why he's excited about that because when they finally get together, Norio's like, okay, we're not broken up. Also, I do like Kunimasa with the glasses. I think they do make him look dapper. They're really nice. But Kunimasa, while he's sitting there reading, Norio's like, okay, I took a bath. I'm not dirty anymore. We're not broken up. Why are you cheating on me? What's going on? And in that moment, when you think they're going to have this conversation, Kunamasa's like, do you like me? And he's like, yes, I like you. And he's like, what do you like? What exactly is it that you like about me? And then he snaps his fingers. And we find out that this whole damn time, since volume 1, he's had a blind over Norio, making him like him. Like, he's been liking Kunimasa without realizing why this whole time, because Kunimasa took advantage of Norio and made him like him. And I was like, oh no. And he's like, what is it that you like about me? Try and say it. And speaking of Scum Villain Self-Saving System, I'm going to do some spoilers to that really here in a hot second. It's like the power of the protagonist, like, swooned Norio. It's like the power that Lo Binghe has in Scum Villain Self-Saving System to woo those around him because he's a protagonist of the story. It's exactly like that with Norio in the Scum Villain spoilers. But basically, Kunimasa is like, I've been brainwashing you this whole time to like me and to be in love with me because I needed you to be. And you don't actually like me. You can't tell me why you like me at all. And it's really kind of masochistic and self-loathing. And Norio is like, my mind is blank because he's like, why are you talking like this? What's going on? He's like, oh, it's blank, huh? And then he gives Norio a hug. And in that moment, there's a part of me that's like, okay, Kunimasa has been groomed to be this leader of the family. He's been groomed into this position. And Norio is somebody that I think he would like to be able to love without any of those strings of family duty or any of that. But that's not how the world works for Kunimasa. And he's like, I have to do what my family's wanting me to do. And I'm only with you, technically, because you're a missing link that could possibly be a way for me to help control the universe as well. Through you, thanks to what we know from Volnera. So, in that moment, though, it also seems like he wants to be able to love Norio, but he can't. And now he knows that Norio doesn't love him. And so it's kind of like this moment where he feels like he's free. And the way that he hugs him here, he's just like, okay. He's like, this is it. We're going to make love this time. And like you wanted us to, but it's not going to be with you brainwashed. And Norio's like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, because I foolishly put that blind on you. Your head was full of nothing but me. But now your mind is empty. There's not one scrap of feeling left towards me. With the blind removed, your true soul will stay cool and in its place. so that they can do it, right? And then this page here where he's like, so when I fuck you, have a clear head about it, because once I do, that'll be the end. There was nothing between us from the start. There was only this. Was it fun to play at being in love? And I was like, bitch, what? So this whole time, the main couple of the series, this whole time, Kunamasa's like, yep, that's all been a lie. I've been using you because you're a missing link, and I need you to further my position, and I'm setting you free now. And the thing about it is, at first you think, okay, well, maybe Kunamasa is like, I'm going to let you go because I love you, and I'm going to have sex with you this one time, and then I'm going to let you go because I know that, like Volnera said, the Murs and the people around me are going to come for you. So I'm going to have sex with you now. I'm setting you free. You don't love me. It's fine, but I love you, so I'm going to let you go, and we're just going to go from there. And that'll be it. And it's like, if you love something, you let it go. And I'm not cool with him having sex with Norio while Norio's in this disoriented state. And now we know that Norio didn't really love him from the start. It was just him tricking him. I was like, what? So I was really pissed off at Kunamasa. But then I was like, well, maybe Kunamasa's doing it because he actually loves him and he's letting him go. And it's just this messed up shit. And it just makes you as the reader go, what is your deal, Kunamasa? Because he is an asshole. And then we take a break from that. So basically Kasamatsu removes the blind from Norio so he can love him and leave him, because he believes there was really no love there, despite what he may personally have thought. He's like, oh, I put a blind on you as a heavyweight and you've been loving me, when in reality you haven't been loving me. And so it's not real. I loved you, but it's not real. So then we cut over to Monami, and Monami donates their hair to make a sword. That's part of the world building in this. And somehow we get a flashback. Inumaki get a flashback. And basically, I don't know if we're seeing, because the end of the volume does like a flashback with Karen, Makio, and this one character named Inukai, which might be Taro's father. So I don't know if it was them. You see Monami and Taro, and they see two what appear to be either mer people or people transversing through time and space. But by the end of the volume, I'm like, was it Karen? Was it Makio? But they have a flashback. So Monami and Taro are connected, possibly to this whole family tree. But we do find out from Yonakune that their grandfather, Kunimatsu, did not believe that Yonakune was tough enough to be the heir of the Madarame family. And instead, they tell Kunimasa that he's going to sacrifice himself for everyone. He's like, because you're so weak, he is going to have to shoulder the burden of the Madarame family and become the sacrifice. Sacrifice to what? Who knows? The series is not exactly telling us. But we get Norio waking up and being pissed that not only did Kunimasa have sex with him, and it was really rough, apparently, but he also wasn't in his right mind. He's like, well, this was non-consensual, and I'm not happy about this. Where the hell is he? And so Kunimasa's gone to college, of all places, and so Norio goes after him. But along the way, Yonakune shows up, being like, what do we do? And Yonakune shows up, and Norio basically uses some kind of ability to get away from them. And so we have Yonakune being like, did he have this missing link power? It activated because Norio was confused and was in like this panicked, anxious state. So we don't know exactly what's happening with that, but Kasamatsu does tell Hidekune that he released Norio. And Hidekune is worried that this isn't exactly like how... What I find interesting about it is that Hidekune is like, talks about how basically Kunimasa has always been somebody that places duty before everything. And so they're like, well, wait a minute. If Norio's the missing link and your duty is to be with the strongest person, you would think that you would keep that blind on Norio so that they would be hopelessly devoted to you and you could have that power. So that also made me think, okay, well, maybe even though Kunimasa is a bastard and an absolute prick, maybe he let Norio go because he didn't want him to be used anymore and didn't feel comfortable with it. Whatever. So he acts all nonchalant around Norio when Norio finally confronts him, and he's like, what the hell? And I love the sight gag where Norio's just like, what are you doing? Why are you being weird? Why are you being this way? Why are you so casual? Like, are we broken up or not? And he's like, why was I under the impression that I loved you? How long were you tampering with my mind? And he says, from the very start. And it's like, And he's like, you may be not able to comprehend this, but a missing link like you is rare and more valuable than you can imagine. Gobbling one up the second you find them is just common sense. Just cover their eyes and take command. And Norio's like, well, fumbling around in people's mind, he's like, I'm not going to let you have your way anymore. And he's like, oh, really? And then he's like, no, leave me alone. And he's like, I may not love you, but I trusted you. And I believed in you. And that sucks in that moment because Norio's like, I may not have loved you, even though you were brainwashing me, but I was trusting you as a person. And he's like, why did this have to happen? And then Kunemasa's like, well, I love you. And Norio's like, well, now that you may love me, but I love this idea that Norio is like, bitch, you can't do this. I was like, that's great that you love me, but you can't just expect me to love you right back instantly. And then Kunemasa's like, well, but shouldn't you try to show off in front of the person you like? He's like, I'm better than most guys out there. And Norio's like, better at what? And he's like, having sex. So it's like Kunemasa is just this big brute, but he has all this power and he's always had everything he's wanted at the cost of his, freedom for the sake of duty. And Norio's like, you can't make me fall in love with you through sex. And Kunemasa's like, yes, I can. And he's like, no. So it leads this big argument. And he's like, if I have sex with you 3 or 4 more times, I'm sure you'll fall for me. And Norio's like, that's not how this works. He's like, I'm not doing that again. But then he's like, damn it, he convinced me to have sex with him. Because he basically does. He convinces him to have sex again. He's like, shit. He's like, he's really good at it. So that second time, Norio, he gets persuaded to have sex with Kunemasa again. But he's like, damn it, he's an asshole, but he's really good at sex. I need to stop that. It reminds me a lot of Fleabag. I feel like if Norio was not so okay with it and was just like, damn it, and just there, then I'd feel bad for him, but what can we do? And then right after that, Kunemasa tries this whole game where he's like, well, I'm really sorry that I hurt you. I'm not going to do anything like that anymore. And then his family shows up. So Kunemasa is so hard to read. On one hand, he's like, I'm just doing this because I have this duty, but I'm not trying to. It feels like Kunemasa let Norio go. He took the blind off. And he's like, I want you to love me, like, for real, not because I was commanding you to love me. I want you to actually love me. And Norio's like, it's not that simple. You can't just take a blind off and be like, okay, now love me for real. I got to build this relationship. So it's like they're back to square one. And Norio's trying to figure out what to do and how to love him. And Kunemasa's just like, well, love me. I'm sorry. I'm trying to, what do I do? And Norio's like, oh my God, this is too much. And he's like, knock it off. You're making things confusing. He's like, and the problem is they've been making out and like having sex so much that he's just like, ugh. So luckily the story explains it. They lay it all out for us. They're like, here, yesterday was a mess. What is brainwashing? So the story conveniently explains for us. They're like, they said, let's lay it all out. One, and this is from Norio's perspective. He's like, I don't entirely get how I was head over heels for Madarame, I guess. And 2, I don't get why, but he was suddenly like, we're breaking up. And so, yeah, then he left, they broke up. He's like, then he came back. And I was surprised and delighted. Barf. He's like, now that I know. He's like, then we ran off to a hotel. It says he faffed off overseas, apparently on some sort of arranged marriage quest, while I took a job at the family's restaurant in order to lie in wait for him to return. Then he came back. I was surprised and delighted. We ran off to a hotel. Then my memory gets fuzzy, but I got a dick shoved in my butt. That's literally what it says. And it says, in the morning, things are still fuzzy, but the reality was that my butt was bleeding. Not cool. So sorry, Norio. Says, and then I humiliated myself in front of all of these strange adults in black suits who are mysterious. And then my memory gets really fuzzy, and the next thing I knew, I was at school with a bleeding head wound. And abruptly, he confessed that he loved me, but I'm not falling for that line. So yeah, so Norio's just like, I don't know what's been going on, but now I've got my mind back. I'm back to square one. You, sir, are not just going to convince me to love you without proving it. You got to work for it. The problem is, even though he says that he never brainwashed his parents, the problem is that Kunamasa's like, everyone believes that you're in love with me, and you've been convincing them through my blind for the last how many years? So now, even though you don't want us to be together, everybody kind of expects us to be together. And he's like, what? I'm like, ugh. And he's like, I like that Norio is like, I hate this. Like, I want us to be a couple, but I want you to work for it. And Kunamasa's like, I love you. I told you that, right? And what does he say there? He says, that's how it is. Take care of me, my girlfriend. And Norio's like, shit, he's got me. He's like, he's got me right where he wants him. I can't just back out now because everybody will be like, what's the deal? And I can't just admit that I was blinded this whole time because it's going to make me look real stupid. So I'm kind of stuck here in this position. He's like, I want to disappear. And that's about the time that Yonakuni shows up. And Yonakuni shows up to say, like, what the fudge is going on? Because I feel like Yonakuni is like, okay, what is happening? What about this blind? What about Kunamasa? What's going on? So I was floored. And then we get this backstory about Karen, Makio, and Inukai living together and having weird, there's lots of lesbian sex and a guy with voyeurism. It's what you'd imagine. It's the Yuri we need for hot Yuri summer. I honestly am really excited about Sex Pistols now because I want to see what happens. Now that Norio has control of their mind, it's like, okay, what are they going to do about Kunamasa? They're kind of stuck in a relationship with Kunamasa. It feels very scum villain, and I'm here for it. I'm just like, okay, all right, let's go. Kunamasa is an asshole, but I kind of get what he's maybe going for. He's trying to ride the line by being the head of the family and performing for his sake of duty. But at the same time, he does love Norio. So he's trying to give him his freedom, but also keep them together. But he has this problem of Norio having free will now. Norio's trying to figure out what to do. And the whole thing with Volnera and the Murs and getting them involved, it's just 20 years of Sex Pistols. And I'm really looking forward to volume 12. It's wild. I was not happy that Kunamasa took advantage and had sex with Norio once he undid the brainwashing while he was in a vulnerable state. That was not cool. I'm glad that Norio kicked him in the head for it. Good for him. But this series has had a lot of elements of non-consensualness. The thing that gets me is that Norio, now that they have their autonomy back, I feel better about it because I'm like, I know Norio is going to try to get to the bottom of this. And Norio has a lot of power that they just don't realize yet. And I'm hoping Volnera talks to them more about it. I hope Shinobu gets in there. Shinobu's kind of the black sheep of the family. Makio thinks she's the black sheep of the family, but she's the propagator of all this nonsense, her and her dad. Shinobu's kind of the black sheep because he would rather just stay away from all of them and hang out with Volnera, and they're kind of outcasts themselves. So I'm very curious what Yonakune wants to do with Norio, so I'm excited to see what happens with that. But we'll just have to wait and see. But kudos to the mangaka for having 20 years of this. I've wanted to make this video since April to just kind of gush to you all about this volume, but here we are. So in any case, I really am excited to hear your comments down below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and who knows? Maybe by next year's JanuYaoi, we'll be able to talk about Volume 12 as well of Sex Pistols. Bye!